have noticed that in a lot of Black TV shows, especially in the 90s, they would perpetuate stereotypes about colorism in their TV shows when it came to representing the characters. So, for example, in the TV show Martin, there was a character who was Martin's girlfriend, and she was light-skinned, and she was viewed as the classy Black person. You know, she had a good job, always wearing suits. She wasn't really very ghetto or ratchet, and, you know, she was viewed as desirable. You know what I'm saying? Martin loved her, and, you know, she was viewed as the attractive girl in the show. And they also had another character, for example, and her name was Shanae. And actually, so Shanae was played by Martin. He put on a wig and he put on lipstick, and he was portraying a girl, even though Martin is a man in real life. And I noticed, like, again with Shanae, like, it was played by a man. So I felt like they were trying to put on this facade that, like, she was very masculine because it was a man playing her in the first place. And then, you know, she was very loud, she was very ghetto, she was very ratchet. None of the guys really found her attractive. They were always, like, you know, despised by her presence. And every time she would come around, they would just be like, ugh, like, ugh, like, I'm getting the ick right now. You know what I mean? And it was just funny how the way they represented a dark-skinned girl, you know, she was, you know, always the ghetto ratchet one, but the light-skinned girl was the classy, acceptable Black person with a good job, and she was always wearing suits. And it's not just Martin, like, it's many different TV shows that I've seen do stuff like that. Like, even in TV shows today, for example, All American. If you look at all the main characters that are women, they're all light-skinned. Besides the one mom that's white, they're all light-skinned. Literally, they're all light skinned. And the ones who are dark skinned, they represent the typical stereotypes of a Black woman. For example, Spencer's mom. Spencer's mom is a single mom. So, of course, the dark-skinned woman in the show is a single mom, and she's representing the strong, independent Black woman. And then the other dark-skinned girl is a masculine lesbian. And if you notice, Coop's girlfriend is a light-skinned girl, and she's a feminine lesbian. And all the other Black women in the show are light-skinned, and they're viewed as feminine and soft and classy, and they dress nice, and they're very articulate and well-spoken. There was a brown-skinned girl in that show too, Simone. And if you notice, like, Simone was the baby mom. So how is it that all the girls who are darker get the strong, independent Black woman persona, or they get the masculine persona, or they get the baby mom story, but all the light-skinned girls, they get viewed as feminine and classy and desirable to all the guys? And even in shows like Grownish, I'm sorry, they're all light-skinned. Ryan Destiny was in like one episode, but like, girl,
yeah, please.
The representation is not really given what it's supposed to, okay? And it's also in cartoon shows too. Like, I don't know if y'all remember Proud Family, and I love Proud Family, don't get me wrong. Like, I did used to watch that as a kid, but that was one of the biggest forms of colorism I've ever seen in a cartoon. Like, Penny Proud, she was a light-skinned girl, and, you know, she was always good at everything, very smart, and her family was very classy. I mean, the girl wore a little blazer to school every day, and, like, you know, she was always good at everything. All the guys desired her. She was very feminine as well, and her parents were also classy. Like, her dad always wore a tie and a suit. Her mom was always dressed classy. They were very articulate, and her best friend Dejanay was a dark-skinned girl, and she was literally ghetto as fuck and ratchet as hell, and her whole family was ghetto and ratchet. And, like, it was ridiculous the way they represented her, because she wasn't as articulate, she wasn't as intelligent as Penny Proud, and she was viewed as undesirable to all the guys. Like, all the guys would get the ick by her. Every time she would flirt with some of the characters, they would get the ick and be like, ew, no. And imagine being a little dark-skinned girl watching cartoons, and you're watching people who look like you get viewed as undesirable to all the guys, and get viewed as very ghetto and ratchet, and get viewed as the one who's not as intelligent or not good at everything compared to their light-skinned counterparts. That's something that gets installed in your brain as a young kid, and it follows you when you get older. And it's not good for dark-skinned young girls to watch that stuff, because it's like, damn, like they're watching themselves be represented in the worst way possible. But we let these stuff slide because we don't talk about this issue enough, and a lot of people don't notice it. But I noticed it as a dark-skinned woman in America. I picked up on it, and honestly, like, I was like, damn, like, I didn't notice it when I was young, but as I grew up and I watched it, I noticed it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is heartbreaking. And I challenge you all to go watch Proud Family now and notice what I'm talking about when I say the difference between Penny Proud and Dejanay and how they're represented, because it's honestly crazy, it's sad, and it's ridiculous. And I don't fuck no.
No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No. Hell no. I refuse. No.
When it comes to colorism and like representation and stuff, it's not just how they represent us, it's the amount of times we actually get put in the forefront of mainstream movies and media. Because if you notice, they don't really hire a lot of dark-skinned women for roles, and a lot of roles that are meant for dark-skinned women, they give it to light-skinned girls. And people like Zendaya have even admitted to this. Like, she said, like, you know, in the industry that I'm in, I benefit from colorism. And she's noticed that she's been offered roles that are meant for dark-skinned girls, and she's had to turn them down because she wants them to be filled with dark-skinned girls, because she knows Hollywood does not like hiring dark-skinned actresses. And it's really true when you think about it. Like, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that's the first example I could think of. Remember Aunt Vivian and how she was dark skinned at first, and when they replaced her with a light skinned woman, and we were like 3 seasons in deep, guys. Like, at that point, like, we already got used to dark skinned Vivian, and y'all just switch it out with a light skinned girl who looks nothing like her and just think that we not gonna notice. Like, why couldn't you hire another dark-skinned actress to fill that role? Because I bet you if Aunt Vivian was originally light-skinned, she would never be replaced with a dark-skinned girl as an actress. I've never seen that happen before. I've never seen a light-skinned actress get replaced with a dark-skinned girl. But I've always seen a dark-skinned actress get replaced with a light-skinned actress. It doesn't make any sense. Obviously, the reasons why the woman who was playing Aunt Vivian left has nothing to do with colorism. I believe it was like personal reasons, but them replacing her with a light-skinned girl instead of them replacing her with a dark-skinned girl shows like the way Hollywood is so colorist. Even in My Wife and Kids, the sister in My Wife and Kids, she was originally dark-skinned. And obviously the reasons why that actress left was for personal reasons, but why not replace her with a dark-skinned girl? They replaced the sister with the light-skinned girl instead. Why? Because there are many dark-skinned actresses who could have filled that role. And this is what I'm saying. Like, they act like there's not enough people to fill those roles. There are many dark-skinned actresses out there who could have filled that role. And it's not even just replacing actresses. Like, there will be roles that are meant for dark-skinned women, and they'll give it to a light-skinned girl. Like, do y'all remember the Nina Simone movie? Like, Nina Simone, right? She was a real person, okay? And she was a jazz singer in the 1900s. And a big part of Nina Simone's life was the fact that she went through a lot of colorism, texturism, and featureism, because she was a dark-skinned girl who did not have features that fit the European beauty standard, okay? She had a very flat nose and, you know, a round face, and she had 4C hair, and she had dark skin. Like, she was pretty much my skin complexion. And that was a big part of her career path as well, and a big aspect of her life. So when they made a biopic to her story and the life of Nina Simone, they chose a light-skinned woman to play the role. A light-skinned woman who looks nothing like Nina Simone. Now, I'm not saying she had to be Nina Simone's clone, but they chose Zoe Saldana. Do you see the difference between Nina Simone and Zoe Saldana? Zoe is like 4 shades lighter than Nina Simone, and she does not have the same facial features as her either. And she doesn't even have 4C hair either. Her hair is like this wig. And you know what they did? They literally put makeup on Zoe that was like 4 shades darker than her regular complexion. And they put a prosthetic nose on her as well, so she could have a flat nose instead of a skinny pointy nose. And they made her wear an afro wig just so she could play the role. You mean to tell me you couldn't find a dark-skinned girl with 4C hair and a flat nose to play the role? Because I can name a couple. They're out there. They're not just like hiding in the shadows. They exist. So why choose Zoe to play the role? Because you don't want dark-skinned women to be in the industry that bad, having the limelight, so you choose a woman who's 4 shades lighter than her. And it's like, it's crazy how Nina Simone went through colorism, texturism, and featurism in her real life, and even in her death she goes through it in her biopic. Yeah, a lot of light-skinned actresses, they act like they can't say no to roles. You can say no, especially if it's not for you. Would they ever hire a white person to play a black person in a movie? Why is it that it's wrong for a white person to perform a role that's meant for a black person, but it's okay for a light-skinned person to perform a role that's meant for a dark-skinned person? That doesn't make any sense. Because we all know if there was a role that was meant for a black person and they gave it to a white person and started putting blackface on them, y'all would have an uproar and y'all would be mad as fuck and y'all would be screaming on the internet for days, for months. Like, even with The Hate You Give, The Hate You Give was originally a book, and this book was about police brutality, and it was shedding light on that issue. In the book, the main character was a dark-skinned girl who had an afro, and literally on the cover of the book, she's dark-skinned, like she's darker than me. But in the movie, they chose Amandla Stenberg, a light-skinned girl, and they put braids in her hair instead. And why do you think they did that? They wanted that message to be received by white people. And the best way for white people to receive a message so heavy as police brutality and racism, they had to have a light-skinned girl play that role, because they know if a dark-skinned girl with an afro played that role, white people would have missed the message and they would have just called her ghetto and ratchet and aggressive. But when it's a light-skinned girl, she's already viewed as the more acceptable black person and the more classy black person. So they're more inclined to be receptive of the message, and they're more inclined to watch the movie all the way through without assuming that she's ghetto or she's ratchet, and connecting with her more and understanding that she is just a black woman with emotions dealing with a very real issue. So when you guys say that, like, oh, to white people, we all look the same. No, we don't. Trust me.
It's true.
I don't know if you guys watched Hunger Games, but Hunger Games, the character Rue was played by the same actress from The Hate You Give, Amandla Stenberg. And Rue was supposed to be a dark-skinned girl. She was described as a dark-skinned girl in the book, but in the movie, she was light-skinned.
That's a damn shame.
And I'm not blaming the actress, because she was a very young girl at the time. So I'm not blaming you. Your parents probably like saw the casting and was like, girl, you just got to do this to start your career. So I'm not blaming you, even though I'm not going to lie. The Hate You Give, you were old enough to make that decision. But why did they choose a light-skinned woman to play that role instead of a dark-skinned girl? Like I said before, white people watch the Hunger Games. A lot of white people read the Hunger Games. I went to a PWI and every single white kid in my school had that book and they was reading that shit. So they were all going to watch that movie. They would have been more accepting of a light-skinned girl playing a black person in a movie that white people are watching compared to a dark-skinned girl playing a lead role in a movie. It's just as simple as that.